Well, it's an extraordinary thing, I think, to see, Olduvai, our ancestors, antecessors, the results of Australopithecus robustus making these extraordinary, completely sphere crystalline rocks, a desire to shape even before language. And I think that's been with us forever. Art as a way of working directly with the world. This isn't about making images, it's about actually forming. And I still believe that sculpture is an extraordinary art form because it's not about making a picture of something, it's about making something that didn't exist before and putting it in the world. By implication, the world changes. I believe that it is a fundamental, in a way, act of hope. That means that things can change and hopefully get better. I think we live in an extraordinary time in which art has been, through the culture industry, institutionalized on the one hand, that we think that we have to go to museums to see art, when actually for most of our species, sapiens sapiens history, art has been something that we did together, that we experienced together, whether that was telling the stories of the tribe or telling somebody what you've just done in the day, as we three have done, getting to know each other. The idea that art is somehow just a natural part of living, as natural as breathing or the beating of our heart. We go to shows. We go to shows in which sculpture has to play the game of theatre. It might be on for a month, might be on for 6 weeks. But here, that capability of sculpture to make place is ignored, and in its place we see, in a way, a demonstration of works that have been taken from a studio and put in this artificial environment, with the hope that maybe they will perhaps be bought, or I'm in a commercial show, that would be the hope, or that they will be, as it were, intellectually understood. Well, it's a very different thing from maybe the history of our cathedrals, which were always open, which were there day and night. The great west fronts of so many cathedrals. I've just done a piece for Winchester West Front. There are 297 life-size sculptures made in the 13th century that are there, rain and shine, night and day, in public view. I just wonder what happened to our relationship to art, that we now think of it as a status symbol, when in fact it was just a way of living.
And you have made, the Angel of the North, so many of those great sculptures that you have come up with on the beach and in the northwest coast. You want art to be just there as part of our everyday experience. You don't have to go to a gallery or a museum.
Yeah, I think it's sort of been made into something that's sort of supposed to be good for you. And here's the angel. I mean, that was an extraordinary experience making that, because actually I couldn't make it on my own. This is in a way a return to a kind of pre-modern idea of how art could be made and who it was for. This was made by finding all the shipwrights that had been making ships, but were told by Margaret Thatcher that they were no longer relevant, and the shipyards, along with all of the mining, the coal mining, kind of were disappeared. And here was something, a totemic object that in some way is a teddy bear for this terrible transition between the purposefulness of a industrial community transitioning to the information age. And it was a way of just saying, no, you do have a future. Look, this is what we the language that we have learned, what we can make, that actually shows that we have the confidence in our own future. And it's been an amazing thing. It sits on top of this mound and shares it with the people that come, and it's very rarely alone.
It's also become a landmark. If I'm driving up, north, oh, right, I'm properly in the north now. when I see it. And it's part of our kind of... Were you worried about how it would be received and whether, people would accept?
No, everything is, I think, an experiment. It's a test of what sculpture can do, and it is I think that this is an amazing thing that it is somehow. It has become. I don't know how many of you live in England, but it has sort of become part of our subconscious in a curious way. You can't make a policy to say that, but it suggests to me that actually there is still that need for, in a way, objects that reroute us, that tell us about where we've been, and maybe also invite us to think about the future.
So let's stick with tonight's debate. How do you see art in today's world, and how it will develop, and how it will change, particularly in the short term and maybe over the much longer term?
Well, I mean, what again, the lesson of COVID was that people suddenly weren't getting on planes in order to relax. They were getting to know their neighbourhood, and people were looking in their environment in a way that they maybe hadn't noticed before. It wasn't just about going to the corner shop, but also sort of seeing what the texture of the buildings that they'd never looked at before. And through that process, they also discovered imaginative objects that were in their environment that they maybe hadn't known before. And I guess my hope, my aspiration is that fact of art becoming, in a way, institutionalized and only seen through museums, and art being commercialized and only being seen, in a way, as items of high capital exchange, can be replaced with, as it were, the older model as art to be lived with, and that we will see a flowering of serious works of art that take their place, as it were, in the collective spaces of our world.
Anthony, the classic question of a pollster is to say, are you optimistic or pessimistic about the future? And I'm just wondering where you stand on that, given what you say is the commoditization of art and the fact that it's, just something that high net worth individuals can have and then trade for something even more money, against what you've just said about the ideal vision of art in the public space.
I think that we all, each and every one of us, is in some senses a creator of the future. I think that art is an instrument through which I think that potential can be realized. I think that we have all, each of us, got to make up our own minds about the value system that we ascribe to. At the moment, we're all in a late capitalist world in which our human purpose is only seen in terms of market productivity, and that's just a disaster. I think that, in facing climate change, in facing population expansion, in facing our responsibilities for a sustainable future, whether our species will actually continue to contribute to the evolution of the biosphere rather than destroying it. These are questions that each of us have to ask ourselves, and I believe that art has an absolutely fundamental role in that. I think that we're in a mess at the moment. We're seeing all of the hopes of globalization replaced by, as it were, market economies that are actually, through nationalism and kind of competition, actually disintegrating what the World Wide Web and Mo's world promised us, that actually we were going to get this instrument that led us to be more together, to see, as it were, give us the instrument of a positive, creative future. I'm afraid that I'm uncertain, deeply uncertain about the future, and certainly the situation in Ukraine is an example of us going backwards to actually, medieval or Paleolithic ways of settling difference. So I am probably on the side of pessimism, but uncertain.
Yeah. Well, look, we're going to come back to some of these themes a little later on in the discussion. I know that probably the tension in the room about what that first vote looks like has been unbearable for you. So I think I am now able to put you out of your misery, and I can give you the results that for the first 5 years, will it be better or worse? 37% say yes. 54% say no. 9% undivided. There we are. We've got the graphics there, everything. 50 years, 59% say it's going to be a better place. 19% say it won't be. 22% undecided. I love the fact that people are so confident to predict what 500 years on will look like. 38% yes, 24% no, 38% undecided. I think the most interesting part about that is that we're pretty pessimistic.
Absolutely equal.
Well, that we're pretty pessimistic about what the next 5 years look like, but the next 50 years...
Somebody else's responsibility, basically.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, the psychology of that is
Like your
fascinating. So I think that's really, really interesting. Clover, let me come to you now, because you've dedicated yourself to, climate action, arguing that we shouldn't feel powerless in the face of the climate crisis. So we've seen those numbers there. What's your short-term prognosis for what the world looks like for the next 5 years? And welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I think it helps to look to the past before we try to project into the future. And our planet is 4.6 billion years old, thereabout. Now, if we scale that down to a number that I can understand, let's say 46 years, right? Humans have been here for about 4 hours. The Industrial Revolution started 1 minute ago. And in the past 60 seconds, we've destroyed over half of the world's forests. In the past 10 seconds, we've wiped out 2/3 of our world's wildlife. Our lives are fleeting, and yet if we look at what we've done to our environment, what we've done to communities, in the context of our planet, it is quite remarkable how quickly we are making ourselves the architects of our own demise. And when I was asked this question, will the world be a better place, the first thing I thought was, well, for whom? Because over the next 5-10 years, the world will be better for the top 1% of the 1%. The rich will get richer. Technologies that were designed to make our lives easier and better will do the opposite. They will line the pockets of a few. They will further create divides socially and politically among the rest of us. And if the science is to go by, we are going to continue to hurtle toward this cliff of climate collapse. And we are going to continue to struggle to let go of the old paradigm, a capitalist system based on limitless growth with finite resources. And those who have both created this system and also been conditioned into it are going to grip that much tighter, even as signs of breakdown show up all around us.
Okay, 5 years, 50 years?
I mean, by the time I'm 50, it's estimated that we will have 1 billion climate migrants. It's estimated that 90% of the world's coral reefs will be dead. So the prognosis is not great, John. And I'm not particularly optimistic, purely because it is my job to read the science every day and to listen to the scientists who are screaming at the top of their lungs, trying to wake society up to this absolute climate emergency. And yet, unfortunately, the reality is that those of us who live in a bubble of climate privilege, like myself living in London, we will continue to avoid the worst impacts of climate breakdown. And the people on the front lines of this crisis who are already paying the price, who are contributing the least to global emissions, the least to ecological catastrophe, they are going to continue to experience the worst impacts. Like the millions of people in India, for example, who are currently facing life-threatening drought and heat. So It's not positive. However, I would not be doing any of this work if I did not have hope. And that hope for me, having participated in COP and global decision-making processes, does not lie with people in closed-door rooms. It lies with people in the streets. It lies with this grassroots mobilization that is happening. I've spoken to so many leaders within companies over the past couple of years who have chosen to give up the top salaries and all of the benefits because they're having this existential crisis. You know, we talk about the great resignation of young people leaving companies, but more and more CEOs are stepping aside and saying, actually, I want to work for companies and organizations that are purpose-driven. And in 50 years' time, it is my generation, the climate generation, who are going to be in these seats of power. So I absolutely have hope that huge transformation is capable. And yet, because of the science, this next 10-year window is absolutely critical for our capacity to take the action that is needed at the scale and at the pace that is required.
Yeah, I think one of the things that really strikes me is the leadership actually now coming from boardrooms, more so than from politicians, on some of the most intractable, so, which is it's downward pressure from their staff and their customers saying, we want you to do something about this. So that is a cause of optimism.
Yeah, I mean, a huge part of what Force of Nature does, our organization, is putting young people into boardrooms, enabling young people to walk the corridors of power, because one of the things that we see time and time again is that there is this real crisis in imagination in the context of climate. You know, I think we spend so much energy articulating the problem, which is what we have to do, but we don't often take pause and think, well, what are we working toward and what does a different system look like? And I believe that young people have a unique advantage because we haven't been conditioned to the status quo, because we haven't had, the wings of our imaginations clipped. So we have that capacity to actually say, how might we rethink our food system or our energy system or how we get around a city, right? And so we need that disruptive thinking. We need that capacity to speak to the climate crisis from a place of moral and ethical imperative to disrupt the incumbent thinking, which is too often ensnared within, well, where is the business opportunity here?
And briefly, Clover, finally, 500 years, take us to, 25, 22.
Yeah, I mean, this is a hard one. I think it would be a little audacious to try and articulate what the future will look like in 500 years, but if we look back 500 years, European colonialists were just starting the global slave trade, right? And we look back in horror at what our ancestors did 5 centuries ago. And yet, I also feel that our descendants 500 years from now are going to look back on us in much the same way. They're going to wonder how it is that we severed ourselves so completely from nature. They're going to ask, how was it that you sacrificed billions of animals every single year so that you could enjoy a turkey at Christmas or a Big Mac on a night out? How was it that you clear-cut million-year-old forests so that you could buy a bottle of shampoo or a chocolate bar? How is it that you allowed the most vulnerable people in your society to pay the cost so that the very top 1% could profit from the commodification of nature, from the exploitation of those communities? So I have faith that our descendants will deeply understand consciousness and sentience and soul and spirit in a way that our current society has not been conditioned to. And I think they will look back in horror. But I think the actions that we take over the next 10, 20, 50, 100 years have to set up a future civilization, society, who is inevitably going to be, flying on rocket ships and be intergalactic. But for the most part, we'll find the most interesting frontier, not discovering new planets, but discovering the inner frontier, doing the inner work, understanding our psychology, understanding how we're deeply interrelated and interconnected with the magical tapestry of life that is all around us.
Fabulous. I want to come to you, Mo, now to talk about...
Clover for Prime Minister, seriously.
Yeah.
Seriously.
I think...
Honestly. Wow.
It was fabulous. Really was.
Seriously.
Yeah. That gives,
I have nothing to say.
Actually, you know, that gives me optimism. Actually, hearing you articulate that so clearly and the involvement of young people in so much of this, which is, I'm sure, vital. But, Mo, let me come to you now, because I want to talk about AI and the role of AI in shaping our future. But maybe it would be good if we just... Where are we now with AI? How is it affecting our lives today?
I think we're completely oblivious to the fact that they're all around us. I don't know who you are, what you did today, but I can guarantee you, you dealt with 50 machines today that were each smarter than you in what they were assigned to do. And you're going to be dealing with 500 tomorrow and 5,000 the day after. And the interesting bit is that they are all the result of capitalism, like Sir Antony said. In my book, I talk about something that's called the 3 inevitables. And the first inevitable is that AI will happen. There's no stopping it, even though people like Elon Musk will say the danger of AI is more than nukes, more than nuclear weapons. It will continue to happen because of capitalism, because we've built sort of a prisoner's dilemma that basically makes sure that if Google develops AI, Facebook will develop AI. If China develops AI, Russia is going to develop AI and America is going to develop AI. And so we're stuck in this. And I think the interesting challenge is most people don't understand the exponential function, which I think Clover has articulated super well. What happened in the last 100 years of development of technology happens almost every day now, right? And the technology acceleration curve looks like this. So what the AI we have today, which took since 1956 to develop, will double in its capacity in the next 56 days, and then double again in 27 days. And
so are we in the infancy of AI?
We are. So I literally compare them to a 1.5-year-old infant, but a prodigy, a 1.5-year-old prodigy that is learning not from trying a few cubes to fit within square holes and round holes, but from billions and billions and billions of data points.
And 5 years, 50 years?
So I actually will say openly, can I start from 500 years?
Yeah, do. Start where you like.
So I have almost an absolute certainty that in 500 years we'll be in a very good place. Okay? Interestingly, what humanity, the civilization we've built, is the result of our intelligence. Okay? Intelligence is not a bad thing. The problems we've created is the result of our stupidity. It's as simple as that. Huh? To take art and lock it in capitalist vaults is stupid. To destroy the planet at the expense of making money is absolute insanity, right? So more intelligence is actually good for us. More intelligence will solve the big problems in ways that are actually quite good for us. And I say that artificial intelligence is about 7 years away from surpassing human intelligence. So 2029, by most predictions, the smartest being on planet Earth is not going to be a human anymore, right? It's going to be a machine. But my observation is that the smartest being on planet Earth has never been a human. The smartest being on planet Earth is life itself. And life, the difference between humans and life is life creates through abundance. Right? I don't need to kill the tigers to survive. For life to survive, you want more tigers, you want more deers, you want more poop, you want more trees, you want more everything, right? And so this is very intelligent, if you ask me. To create almost out of nothing with abundance is a very interesting approach. And when the machines surpass our intelligence, they will end up there. They will end up in a place where they will not need to destroy humanity or destroy anything to create. Okay? There is a question around our relevance in that environment, to be honest, but definitely it will be an environment where we can solve climate change because we first will make the right decisions, and second will have the right technology, the right mindset, the right intelligence to solve it. So to start 500 years time, it's a utopia. You can walk to a tree and pick an apple, walk to another tree and pick an iPhone, everything's fine.
But isn't there good intelligence and bad intelligence? I mean, Anthony was talking a moment ago.
There isn't, no.
But you know, the horror of Ukraine, where possibly you could argue, well, one person has decided that
that's not the question of intelligence, John. This is a question of morals. So we don't make decisions based on our intelligence. We make decisions based on our value set as informed by our intelligence.
But I suppose the question I'm getting at is, will AI be able to override stupidity?
So that's the core of our 5 and 50 years, right? The core of, and please don't hate me, I'm just the messenger here. And like you rightly said, I left because I realized what we were building, right? We're not building another machine. Just please understand this. We're building a form of a sentient being that is capable of consciousness, is autonomous to make decisions, has free will, has consciousness, has emotions, okay? And accordingly, a form of being that will actually form its own value set. And that value set, interestingly, is taught to those machines by you and I. What we will say in this conversation as broadcast online is going to be understood by the machines. And the machines will say, this Mo guy, yeah, we like him. That other guy that's killing people in Ukraine, we don't, right? And interestingly, the information we put out there about our human behavior, we are mommy and daddy. We are the parents of this infant, okay? And all of the shaping of our future, believe it or not, you know, I know you reported on Trump for many, many years, is not about what Trump tweeted. It's about the 30,000 hate speech that came after. That's what informed the machines of what the reality of humanity was, right? And if we can, so let's do 5 and 50. In computer science, which is crazy when you think about it, if you asked any computer scientist about what happens when AI surpasses human intelligence, they'll tell you it's a singularity. We have no idea. Okay? We don't know if it's going to be good. We don't know if it's going to be bad. So I'm undecided openly, right? But it will depend on how we behave. If we actually instill the right morals in those machines, the singularity will turn into a utopia. If we instill a magnification of how horrible we've become as humans into those machines, give them the steroids of 1 billion times smarter than us. They're going to be 1 billion times smarter than all of us combined by the year 2045. I predict 2049. The consensus is 2045, right? When they're 1 billion times smarter than us with our morals, good luck. Very angry teenagers.
But if we are the parents of this child, the inputs we're giving the child surely impact how the child grows up.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Therefore, how can we ensure moral goodness?
Yeah, so I got really stuck when I was writing the book in that area, right? Because if you look around you, you think that humanity sucks, right? You think that we're the worst people in the world, we're the worst beings on the planet. But the truth is we are not, believe it or not. And I think this is what most people forget. We were talking before we came here about my podcast, and I hosted Edith Eger. Edith Eger is a Holocaust survivor, 93 years old, truly an angel. And if you hear the story of World War II from Edith, you would realize that humanity is amazing. If you hear the story of World War II from the perspective of what Hitler did, you think that humanity is scum, right? But the reality is there are more Ediths in our world than there are Hitlers. Right? There are more couples that will kiss tonight than couples that will kill each other. Okay? And I don't blame you for it, but the reality is that the social media and mainstream media have blurred that image of humanity. We just show the negative sides of us. We show the wrong that is happening. We don't show the right that is happening. Okay? And I think if enough of us, and my calculation is if 1% of us can instill doubt in the minds of the machines, okay, that we're mostly Ediths. If 1% of us, just like I instilled doubt in your mind now that humanity is not scum, right? The machines will be smart enough to say, oh, mommy is Edith Eger, daddy is Mo. It's not Putin, okay? And when they see it that way, they will develop the moral system that says, let's do what Clover wants. Let's do what Anthony wants. Let's create an environment that's actually better for all of us.
When you sit here, an artist who has a vision in his own head of what to create, and you sculpt it. I can't imagine the beauty of that process. And you hear Mo talking about how machines are going to do everything.
It's really scary. I don't know. I mean,
is very scary.
Did you believe this man? I mean, this machine is going to overtake us and spit us out because we're irrelevant, are we not? I mean, I think the fundamental problem that I have with Mo's vision is that he equates life and the evolution of life that's been going on for whatever, since the first stromatolites, so 3.7 billion years ago, with a machine. They're fundamentally different things. We have an entanglement of extraordinary, the flora, the fauna, the fungi of this world that created that extraordinary, gas on which we completely rely. 21 degrees of oxygen is what we need to thrive. I'm not sure that I see that oxygen in the superintelligence of a supercomputer that is in some way going to take over our moral order. I think the only place that comes from is through human experience.